If you came across a road like this 150 years ago, you would say, gosh, I'm on the interstate. This is what major highways looked like back when the West was settled. Those roads built into a network that actually settled the West. They provided transportation between communities, access to ranches, logging, mining, and minerals. And the federal government recognized that without these roads, the West could not be settled, and granted the rights of way to protect them if the counties and states would build them, because the federal government knew that they couldn't. If you came across this same road today, though, all you would find is controversy. RS 2477 has become a big legal challenge in the West. Today on the county seat, we'll look at how that challenge sits and what lies ahead. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the county seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today we are going to be talking about RS 2477. Probably more than any other state in the Union, that is a phrase that's known by the general public because it has been such an issue. Joining us today for our discussion is Tony Rampton from the Attorney General's office. He is the head of the Public Lands Office and is an Assistant Attorney General. Tony, thank you for joining us so much.
My pleasure.
I would like to talk about a little bit about the history of RS 2477 as far as an issue goes. Obviously, their history goes back to the Mining Act, but their controversy has a start. Do you know where that is?
Let's back up to the Mining Act for a minute because it really sets the stage. Back in the 1800s, when the West was being settled, the Congress of the United States recognized that most of the western land was federal land. Therefore, the roads that the settlers were building were on federal land for the most part. And in 1866, by part of the Mining Act, they passed a law that said that the federal government would recognize the rights of way upon which those roads were built. That law remained in effect until 1976. In 1976, the Federal Land Policy Management Act was passed, and that repealed the 1866 statute, but said that any roads or rights-of-way that were in existence as of 1976 would continue to be recognized by the federal government. So that's what really triggered all this RS 2477 activity. Now, since that time, there have been a number of efforts to resolve this administratively. And it wasn't until very recently that the federal government has taken the firm position that in order to prove up an RS 2477 right-of-way, the state or the county would have to go into federal court and prove that right-of-way, or at least prove the existence of that right-of-way in 1976. So that's why we're in court. Basically, the federal government gave us no choice.
The first time I heard RS 2477 come up as a controversy was the Burr Trail. Garfield County decided that there'd been this road out there, and wouldn't it be a fine thing to pave part of it and you know, help keep it open a little bit better, and so they did, and that's what that triggered a backlash.
There was really no question as to whether there was an RS 2477 road. The bigger question was, what could the county do with that road? That is, did the county have the authority to go ahead and widen the road and pave the road? So the dispute in that case was more about the upgrading of the road than it was about the existence of the road. The lawsuits we're dealing with now are dealing with the question of the existence of the road.
Oh, so there is a slight difference.
There is a difference.
Obviously, Kane County has been one of the more ardent supporters of establishing these rights-of-ways, and I believe they started the legal challenges, did they not?
No, well, yes and no. There were two early cases that were filed by the state and by a couple of Utah counties. One of the cases was in San Juan County. That was the Salt Creek case, where the road goes through Canyonlands National Park. The other case is in Kane County, and that's what we call the Bald Knoll case. and that case involved 15 roads in Kane County. Now, those are the only two cases that have been tried thus far. And out of the 16 roads involved in those two cases, the state and the counties have prevailed on 12 of the 16, so about 75%.
When we're looking at the decisions that have come out, what have we learned about that process that you know, what have become the points that become salient legal points in protecting that right?
There's some things that have become firmly established in the law. There are a number of other issues that are still up in the air that we're working on. A lot of those issues are presently before the 10th Circuit. But the issues that are firm now, we know we have two ways of showing an RS-2477 road. If the road, as of 1976, was regularly maintained by the county, it's an RS-2477. We win that road. If the road is not one that has regularly been maintained by the county, then what we have to prove is that there was 10 years of continuous public use by 1976. So we have to go back to at least 1966 to establish that the road was publicly used during that period of time. Most of these roads go way back beyond 1966, but those are the two tests that have been established. There are about a half a dozen other issues that are still up in the air, but all of them are presently before the 10th Circuit. So we should have almost all of the critical questions answered within the next 12 months.
This is just a theoretical question, because a lot of these roads, and I've been on a number of them, that are under contention, they show up on USGS maps prior to 1976. You'll see them in, you know, in the 60s, you'll see them in revisions in the 50s. These roads have been there, they're on the federal maps. Shouldn't that qualify? That
helps, but there are a number of pieces of evidence that we need to introduce at trial. Old highway maps, old US maps, that's one piece of evidence, but it doesn't really do the whole job. We have to, the other evidence that we have is we have aerial photographs, historical aerial photographs showing the roads. We have USGS topographical maps that show the presence of the roads going way back. But we also have to have live testimony from people who actually maintained the road or used the road, going back to at least 1966. So there's a lot of evidence that we have to produce at trial. Now, for each and every road that we have in these complaints, we have most of that evidence. It wouldn't be in the complaint otherwise.
I guess part of the problem that I've seen in the last 6-7 years following this issue as it's developed is that as you go through every year that passes, you have people that will have that historical evidence, and their testimony, because they pass away, gets lost. Is that still a concern to the state, or do you think you've covered that base?
No, that's our biggest concern right now, and that's why we're focusing on the taking of depositions of people that are elderly and people that are ill. And we've taken about 175. We're going to take about 220 by the end of May. So that's what we're trying to do right now, is preserve that testimony by the taking of the depositions of these people.
Is that your primary focus at this
That's
point?
our focus right now, yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to put in a little pitch. If somebody knows a story about 1966 or before on a road, a backcountry rural road, what are they supposed to do? How do they get in touch with you?
We have networks. Really, the counties are responsible for kind of combing the woods for the old timers or the people that are ill. They pass the names of the witnesses on to us, and then we go from there.
RS-2477 is really kind of a county issue. Why did the state get involved in it?
By statute, the state has a 1/2 undivided interest in all county roads. So any road that is determined to be an RS-2477 road is jointly owned 50-50 by the county and by the state.
That's like a real property interest in a right-of-way, is it not?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
if you fail to protect that, but the road exists, you've lost the real property interest in it. It's only it's only road by permission. That if they would continue to allow the road from the federal side?
Ultimately, what we're trying to do is keep these roads open. We're trying to preserve the status quo. We're not trying to change anything. We're not trying to upgrade anything. We're not trying to add roads. All we're trying to do is keep existing roads open. And these are the roads that provide for hunting, recreation, ranching, timber. All of the activities on the public lands wouldn't happen without the existence of these roads.
Is it harder to prove a forest road as an RS-2477 as opposed to BLM?
We're not even going after the forest roads at this point because you have to go clear back to about 1906. You'd have to prove back to 1906 when the forests were created, and we know we can't do that.
Good. Tony, thank you so much for your time.
You bet.
Helps kind of clear up the picture. Stay with us. We'll be back with the county seat. We'll take this conversation to a county level when we return, and we hope that you will stay with us. We'll be right back.
You often hear people say, think outside the box. But maybe it's time for you to take a moment and look inside the box. It's time to think inside the box. Box Elder County.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community.
It makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
When you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
Planning your next conference or corporate event? The Davis Conference Center offers 70,000 square feet of flexible meeting and exhibit space, plus high-tech audio-visual services that will make your event a success. Whether you're planning a training, meeting, company retreat, wedding, or large convention, let the staff at the Davis Conference Center help you arrange your next event. Located east of I-15 in Layton, call 801-416-8888 or visit davisconferencecenter.com today.
Why is it that environmental protection and economic development are often placed at odds with each other? In Duchesne County, they have both. Here, modern industry and resource development go hand in hand with some of the most pristine wilderness in the western United States. A strong economy balanced with a lifestyle of exploration and discovery. But don't take my word for it. Go visit them. Duchesne County. Close enough for business. Far enough, get away.
Kanab. Base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah County? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our topic today is RS-2477. We've had our conversation at the state level, and we've actually turned our attention and our location to the county level. We are in Kane County in Kanab, and we're talking to the Kane County commissioners. And this is the county that really turned this into a crusade with their challenge to the roads, where it had just been an isolated case previously. You guys really laid the groundwork. Joining us today is Jim Matson, Doug Heaton, and Dirk Clayson, the 3 commissioners of Kane County. So, just to bring people up to speed, last week there was a decision from the 10th Circuit Court. And I think it would be good for us to take a few minutes and talk about it.
We were really pleased with the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals decision that has come out recently. There were a number of technical issues that we were moving forward with, but the essence of the decision was all very positive. First of all, the public water reserves were an issue that we had a lot of concern with in our original Bald Knoll case. We were not granted title for the public water reserves, and this left a number of unconnected segments in our road structure, and we won title to those in the appeal.
So how would you have managed a road if you couldn't drive it continuously? You know, it's in a nonlinear computer world that works, but in a real world it doesn't.
Well, we were trying to figure out if we could make jumping ramps long enough to make it, but this will help us out a lot. So that really was a critical thing, because you're right. If we had non-connected segments of a road, what do you really have? And so this gives us continuous access to all of those roads.
Okay, what was the next one?
The next issue was we were challenged on our statute of limitations. There was a challenge by the federal attorneys that our statute of limitations clock should have begun many years ago when the wilderness study areas in our county were created, and the ruling was against that, preserving our case. And so that, again, is really fantastic for our case.
What's the timeline then for the statute of limitations? When did the clock start?
Well, we believe that the clock started when we were issued official notification from the federal government that they had intention to close specific roads. And so based on that, we've met all of the statute of limitation requirements, and the court reaffirmed that.
Now, it's important to understand, I think, that if you get the case started and that statute of limitation time clock goes off, once the case is started, it's still protected. Is that not the case?
Right. It's completely protected through as long as we've issued the complaint in court. By then we're good to go.
You know, that makes it really good for the state litigation that is following our litigation as well, because that really solves a huge problem for the state as they come down the same road that we're going down now.
Okay, what's the next one?
We had a few minor technical things. One issue that we lost essentially title to was a case for controversy on some of our paved roads. The argument was made that there was no attempt to prevent us from using or maintaining those roads, so there wasn't enough controversy to rule on those. So in essence, we lost some technical issues associated with that, but that's still a declaration that we still have the right to maintain and use those roads. And we've also had a couple of other minor things on road widths that are going to be reviewed, and on some of the burden of proof decisions. So, but all of those issues are fairly minor, and the details of those will be worked out.
So it sounds like that of the 5 or 6 different issues, maybe 5 of the 6 you guys actually prevailed on. Is that, or were favorable to the county? Would that be a correct statement?
Well, technically not 5 of the 6, but the things that we didn't prevail on we don't see as problematic particularly. Scope, width of the road. We know they're going to give us the road now. The width is going to be what they finally decide it's going to be, but so that's not terribly problematic for us.
And the reason that I say that as a closing thought on this conversation is that my first exposure to the ruling actually came from some of the wilderness organizations that have been filing and getting involved in these lawsuits. And it sounded, from what they were saying, like they had a clear-cut victory, but from what you're saying, it doesn't sound like it was so clear-cut.
Well, I think we can say this. We absolutely have preserved our right to travel down these roadways and maintain them.
Great. We've got more to discuss here on the county seat. We're going to come back and talk about the importance of what this entire issue is about and what kind of impact it has on the citizens of this county and on you. We'll be right back with the County Seat.
Rediscover your sense of adventure by attending the 17th Annual Bluff International Balloon Festival, January 16th through the 18th in Bluff, Utah. Join us for some of the most beautiful, unencumbered flying in the Southwest. Utah's San Juan County, where life is elevated.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing? Find the beauty, serenity, family fun, or anything else that's missing from your life in the Cedar City Bryan Head area. Gain access to your adventure, whether it's camping, hiking, the arts, festivals, or just a getaway. Visit cedarcityayl.com for details on all the adventures that you can access in scenic southern Utah.
When you buy Utah made and grown.
I'm a Utah's own vegetable grower. I care about the foods I produce.
Because when it comes to quality local foods, I understand the importance of Utah grown and raised.
The jobs that we enjoy are vital because Utah's own supports our communities.
As a consumer, I look for Utah's own products because Utah's own is good for me and it's good for Utah.
Keep it here at home, Utah's own.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah County? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
What do you picture when you hear Rich County, Utah? Bear Lake Adventure? Snowmobile action? Pristine skiing? Spectacular solitude? Well, if that isn't what first came to mind, then you just don't know Rich County. The Bear Lake Monster Polar Plunge, snowmobiling Monte Cristo, ice fishing Bear Lake, skiing the backcountry, fishing at the Cisco Disco. Come and find out what you never knew you were missing. Rich County, Utah.
Welcome back to the County Seat. Our conversation today is on RS 2477. If you missed the last segment, we talked about a recent 10th Circuit Court of Appeals ruling that preserved access to the roads in their cases down here in the county. But I want to talk now generally about the importance of this, because a lot of people say, why is everybody making such a fuss? And there are even people in your own county that say, you guys have wasted a lot of money going to court. Why? It's a waste of time and effort.
There's a couple of thoughts, Chad, on that. One, I think one of the key ones is that this paves the way, if you'll allow me to say that, to really clear up this issue as far as our county's concerned, the state of Utah, and the other states that are in the 10th Circuit. I think this goes a long ways to set this up so that we can start looking at access and making sure we have that access. The other point I wanted to kind of make is drift back a ways into the 1960s, the 64 Wilderness Act. I think this whole access and RS 2477 thing is driven by the land preservation interests, at the exclusion of local peoples and local governments. And this helps keep the access open, and then we can debate the rest of it. But if it's a large island that's off limits, we've lost. So we've got to keep the access in there so that we can be effective in what's needed for our local culture, economy, the historical use of those areas.
There are a lot of people that say that access is not use but abuse by counties and people in the backcountry, what's the answer to that?
Access to the natural resources, access to the public lands for recreation and for all of those things. There's this old saying that goes around, these lands belong to all of us. And I don't know that I particularly agreed with that to wholeheartedly, but the fact of the matter is, all of us, any of us, are having a much harder time going the places where we used to go because the federal government has this despicable habit of just closing roads and saying, no, this road is no longer there. And our whole goal in this has been to preserve for the county citizens, and from our friends around the world, preserving access to, so that we could actually go out and enjoy these public lands, recreation, and all these other things, sightseeing, all of these other things. We want to be able to preserve that for the future and for our future.
From a local standpoint, you know, just as an example, have you heard the term Eastering? On Easter Day, families here for 100 years have gone out and enjoyed that particular day with their families and taken advantage of that. So with the access being an issue, where are they going to have their Eastering? At a city park? No. Let's maintain that use.
And we need to remember that we are only preserving roads that have been in use prior to 1966. So we've got a long history of use on these roads. Sometimes it's represented that we're trying to preserve cow trails.
You know, I'd like to say one last closing thing on this topic. In the beginning of the show, I mentioned that this was a historical highway system. These county roads were what built the West. And from an archaeological and from a historical standpoint, isn't that something worth preserving? And I leave that with your reaction to that.
They're definitely worth preserving. Our ability to access all of everything that we enjoy comes from the natural resource. And you can't show me anything that we use that doesn't somehow derive from the natural resource. And you take away our access to the natural resource, not only does recreation goes away, but this table goes away, the electricity goes away, everything that we enjoy that makes life anyway comfortable, the food we eat, it all comes from the natural resource.
You know, and we're conducting this campaign in a, you know, under the rule of law in a civil fashion. So I think it's up to the American public and our judicial system to sort this out, and we think we're right.
Okay, well, we want to thank you for joining us here on the County Seat. We invite you to share this with your friends. We do have this on our website, thecountyseat.tv, and social media. And we thank you for inviting us into your home each week. We would appreciate your comments and your contributions to the dialogue that we have here. So we welcome them from whatever perspective you come. We'll look for you next week on the County Seat.
There is a place where young and old make connections, where kids feel like grown-ups, and grown-ups feel like kids. There is a place where beauty arises in contrast, where wonder is universal, and laughter second nature. There is a place where friends find a future, families find each other, and feelings find their home. There is a place.
If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.